So, Steve, thanks, and welcome to the 5 minute update. Just so the listeners can do sort of a sound check and figure out whose voice is whose, can you give me your name and your, if you're not on LinkedIn, maybe your company website so people can track you down that way?
Sure, sure. Well, thanks, David, for having me. Again, my name is Steve Kirsch. I'm the founder of softwareanalysisgroup.com. I'm also an adjunct professor at the School of Engineering at Vanderbilt University.
Excellent. Okay. And I'm Dave Pausner. Normally, both Steve Kavikoff and Sanjay Prasad would be on with me, but they're both traveling today. So Steve, the topic today is, and we're going to try to limit this to 5 minutes, is does price really matter in a contract, or is it the only thing that matters? And you have some thoughts on it, so let's get it rolling. I'll interrupt you if you don't mind, and let's see if we can pull out some of the big tidbits from this thing. So take it away.
Sure. In my experience, obviously price is critical, but when we're involved in negotiating transactions or looking after the transaction, price is really secondary because it's really the terms. In other words, effectively, as we all heard, no, devil is in the details. So for example, you would be concerned about certain metrics when you're negotiating the price, issues like geographical territories with software, number of users, number of concurrent users. That's with on-premises software. When we think about software as a service or SaaS, we get into issues with respect to number of users concurrently. We get into issues as to, with both on-premises and SaaS, customization, configuration, what you can do. That's one category. And another really critical category that I've really seen a lot of is the services that are related to the price for the software. And that includes, for example, training, installation and implementation, whether customization is being done. Those are some of the issues as well, which are really critical.
Let me interrupt you.
Sure.
Let me step back from all this. So
Sure.
I guess what you're saying is if somebody, you're presented with a question, if one is presented with a question, is price all that really matters? You're saying, well, duh, of course not, because a low price for something you don't want or don't need is worth nothing at all. So it might as well have infinite price because you've just essentially given away even $1 or $100 or $1,000 for something of no value, which I think probably comes out to infinity for the price. So you're saying price isn't all that matters because you need to have the service you want or the product you want. I think that's sort of the take home on what you just said, and you took it into the software licensing realm, but that's got to be sort of true across the board. So let me ask you this. When people ask the stupid question that we at 5 Minute Update asked you, which was, is price all that really matters? That question has to really mean something in some context. So sometimes price is all that matters, I assume, with what do you call a fungible good. Can you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. In fact, let me just go back to, I agree with you about, in general, I often say, don't buy dog food on sale if you don't have a dog. So I agree with you about with stuff like that. It really is a fungible concept because when you think about what your needs are, particularly at the enterprise level, you're going to be covering issues in terms of just not the short term meeting a specific need, but also the long term as well. Issues in terms of whether or not rights for additional modules. Again, I think of this in the software world, what kind of support services you have, how fast the vendor is going to respond when you need support. There's a variety of other issues, and that's what really matters in terms of the good you're buying.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna be stupid about this, or ask a dumb question. Let me flip the question around. When is it in one circumstance contractually? When does it occur that price is all that really matters? Because I want to drag you back to this fungibles. For example, if I were buying lumps of coal in bulk for my Big Green Egg barbecue at home, is that a situation where price is all that matters, or is there never a situation where price is all that matters?
That's a really good way of phrasing it, Dave. I think that buying lumps of coal for your green egg, price isn't going to matter much. I don't barbecue, but I assume there's different qualities of kinds of charcoal. So in that regard, a better quality charcoal. I often equate what you're saying, like, well, buying a tube of toothpaste from a particular vendor, well, whether you buy it at one distributor, one retailer, or another retailer, price is all that matters because you're buying exactly the same good or exactly the same service.
Okay, okay, that's a great point. So if I have a choice of going to, and you've been in the Boston area, if I have a
Yeah.
choice of, who is it, Trader Joe's versus Whole Foods versus Star Market for Tom's toothpaste spearmint, sort of family size, price is all that matters, sort of. But if I'm closer to one versus the other, I guess you would argue, well, convenience is part of the price issue. Can you? I sort of where I'm trying to drag you into right now is it the case that price is never all that really matters, or is it only the case when you're on the internet, so that the number of keystrokes is all that changes the difference? You follow me? We're sort of turning the question.
Yeah. No, actually, you've made a really good point there too, Dave. And that is, now you've picked up on something in economics. We often call that your transaction costs. So yeah, I can get that tube of toothpaste at Trader Joe's, but the drive over to Trader Joe's might be a hassle, or the line at the cash register. So I'm prepared, I think we all are prepared for the value of convenience, as well as quality and other factors too.
Okay. Okay, so interesting. So that, I think some of the listeners, or many of the listeners, if there are indeed are any, for the 5-minute update, would then try to bring this into their own business and their own negotiations. And their own businesses, I would say, would be either working at an enterprise selling product, or maybe they're at a service provider selling services. And they may say to themselves, well, wait a minute, if I'm faced with a customer or a client or prospective who is saying, look, I know you're going to provide such and such to me, you're offering to provide that. I treat that as a fungible, just what's it going to cost? Let's cut to the chase. You would say, don't get dragged into that discussion. I bet you would say something like, well, I'll tell you. The response might be, look, we'll get to price, but before we get there, let me tell you what the differentiating factors are first. And you might say it's either convenience or it's quality or so forth. Can you work with that?
Yeah, I can. In fact, let's think about this, beyond the tube of toothpaste, let's think about it at the enterprise level too. It's not simply the price, say $100 or $100,000 or millions of dollars. It's also the timing of the payments. So how much are you paying? When are you paying? And how we structure that. Is it a purchase? Is it going to be a lease? So all of these factors need to be considered by both parties, the vendor and the enterprise or the consumer. So that tube of toothpaste is simple, but these other things, it gets complex. But go ahead.
How do you force that discussion? And I suspect we're coming up on our 5 minutes, but how do you force that discussion? Whether you're bargaining for an enterprise, whether you're in their legal department or their sales group, how do you force that discussion?
You provide sufficient information. If you are on the consumer or the licensee subscriber side, you force a discussion as to what matters to you, i.e., for example, you just don't have the budget to pay for that right now, or you need additional services tossed in. You can spend, say, X number of dollars, but you're going to have other goodies tossed in, like customization, configuration, like training. So you basically steer the discussion there. You also, quite frankly, understand what's from the enterprise level, that vendor, what's driving them. Just like, for example, it's often said, buy a car the last week of the quarter or the last week of the year, you can get a better deal. Now, I haven't seen any empirical research on that. It's the same with if you're buying something from an enterprise. Goods will be on sale at certain times, and you can push that too if you are at that consumer side.
So stepping back, this is a sort of a no-pitch event, but let me ask you this. I'm guessing from what little we've spoken, that you spend quite a bit of your time either, whether it's at the law school or the business school, I forget what you're at. But
engineering, and in business school. I used to be a business school professor too.
Okay. I'm guessing you spent a lot of time over the years analyzing and perhaps testifying regarding contracts. Has there ever been an instance in all your time that you found yourself either coming down back to your, I guess it would be clients for you or your customers,
Right.
or opining in court that really price is the only differentiating factor here and therefore ... Or is it always the case that price is never the only factor, it's just the one people come up with first, but indeed there's a whole lot of other factors?
It's always other factors, unless there is just an enormous delta on the price. Say, for example, an organization is licensing software that they need for the particular application or services, again, I speak of it as an enterprise level, then it's comparing apples to apples. But generally, there's a lot more fruit that has to be considered in that transaction as well. So it's rarely going to be just price. You have to look at what's being included because this is complex stuff.
Fair enough. So we are probably over our 5 minutes, but
Okay.
Steve Kirsch, much appreciated, and thanks for joining us today.
Oh, Dave, my pleasure, and I really appreciate the time. Everyone, take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.